I don't think it was much of a surprise to most of us when we found out this week that the NFL owners had overwhelmingly approved by a vote of 31 to 1 for the Raiders to be able to relocate from Oakland to Las Vegas. This has been something that's been in the works for a while. This has been something that's been talked about for a while, discussed for a while. This has been something that has seemed to be an inevitability for quite a while now. And, at the end of the day, whenever you talk about relocating a franchise, it's never pretty. It's never ideal. It's never something that elicits warm feelings for the city that's ultimately losing the organization. But at the end of the day, sometimes, frankly, it's a necessary evil and it has to be done. And in this particular case, from a Raiders organization standpoint, from the NFL standpoint, this was something that had to be done. Now, whenever something like this happens, you're going to get all types of hurt emotions and butthurt and anger and frustration and angst out of that city that's losing this team. And they're going to be looking to point fingers, which is a natural thing. It's what we do as people. We look, who's at fault? Who's to blame here? Who's responsible for this happening? Well, it's an important question. So let me talk about that first. Who's to blame for the Raiders ultimately going to Las Vegas as soon as the 2019 season? I think first you got to look at the city of Oakland. Not only did they insist on the Raiders and A's sharing that crappy-ass stadium for all these years, not only did they drag their feet for all of these years with giving them at least one new stadium, if not both of those teams a stadium, you're also talking about a city that you just found out you're losing the Warriors to San Francisco in another few years. So you're losing another attraction that you have there. On top of that, the Raiders organization has a history of relocating. They left Oakland before to go to Los Angeles and then came back. So the precedent was there. This is not like a team that had spent 40, 50, 60, 70 years in one locale and you just convince yourself foolishly that there's no way in the world that they would ever leave. They just couldn't do it to the community. They couldn't do it to themselves. So as a result, we have the ultimate trump card, the ultimate leverage. Well, this world is all about leverage and who has it and who takes advantage of it. The Raiders, being an NFL franchise, had all the leverage. And they've shown you that leverage before. Just because Al Davis is no longer with us doesn't mean that that precedent didn't still exist from the past and couldn't have history repeat itself again. And the mayor dragging her fucking feet and the stupid fuckers in Oakland, especially the politicos, that sit there and allow this to happen, should all look at themselves in the face, in the mirror, and fucking ram their heads into the fucking mirror. How stupid can you fucking be? Well, we're proud of not putting public money into it. Are you proud of being dipshits? Because at the end of the day, that's exactly what you are. You overplayed your fucking hand. You tried to out-leverage a bunch of fucking billionaires, and you rolled craps. You went against a bunch of billionaires and thought you were going to be successful, knowing that you had limited control and limited leverage, because at the end of the day, that team will be able to find a home somewhere. That's stupid. I think you also got to blame the city of Los Angeles. It's not their fault in a sense from a negative way, but the city of Los Angeles kind of got this ball rolling by wanting teams there and wanting teams back there for years, and the Raiders were in talks to go back to Los Angeles, and it ultimately didn't pan out. But it was Los Angeles who first got the Rams to come there, who then got the Chargers now to come there as well. Now you've set that precedent for the NFL that they can get teams to relocate if they want to make this type of power play. You've already relocated 2 teams in a 12-month stretch. You might as well get a third one out of the fucking way, and you've got all the trump cards and all the leverage. While Los Angeles is out of the mix, there are going to be other cities that maybe would be very potentially interested in having a team that couldn't get the Rams or the Chargers to come to them, such as a San Antonio, such as a Las Vegas. So seeing how the city of Los Angeles committed to this massive stadium deal and got those 2 teams to come, that's part of the reason why this Raiders thing ultimately happened, that they're going to Vegas instead of Los Angeles because it got done with the Rams and then the Chargers and not the Raiders. And you could partially blame Jerry Jones too, only in the sense of the fact that he didn't necessarily want another team in Texas, so I think he was trying to leverage them going to Las Vegas. How much blame does he really share? Maybe not that much, but he's probably one of the bigger supporters behind the scenes. I think you also got to blame Al Davis because at the end of the day, it was Al Davis that left Oakland once in large part because he didn't get a stadium, to go to Los Angeles where he ultimately didn't get a stadium, to come back to Oakland where he never got a fucking stadium. Al Davis would up and move just in part to troll on freaking Roselle and Tagliabue, but he was too fucking stupid to actually get a lockdown stadium deal in place before he actually did move. He would just up and move. So as much as everybody wants to kiss Al Davis's ass, rest in peace, sir, at the end of the day, some of the blame does go to him because he didn't previously get this damn stadium deal done in Oakland 30 plus years ago, and then at any point in time after the Raiders moved back to Oakland. You got to blame Al too, almost as much as you do the city of Oakland. But at the end of the day, the city of Oakland deserves the lion's share of the blame. If you want to yell at the NFL and the owners in Goodell, go ahead and do that. But they're utilizing their leverage. They're getting the best deal for them. Why wouldn't they? Why shouldn't they? Why couldn't they? And they did. And Oakland overplayed their hand, knowing they already lost the Warriors, knowing there's a very real chance when you just had two other NFL teams relocate. The NFL's in that mode. The Raiders are desperately wanting to leave. At the end of the day, you drop trowel, you bend over, you do what it takes, including taking it, to keep that damn team there. And of course, it didn't happen. So those are the parties that deserve some of the blame. Now, looking at this move, what do I think of it? Well, I think there are some major positives for the organization in the league, and then I think there are some major significant question marks that have me really concerned about this move. From a positive standpoint, I think this helps Mark Davis establish himself as a player within the NFL circles, in terms of the ownership circles. Yes, he had to have help to get it done, but at the end of the day, they got it done. And he got a new stadium deal that his dad could never get. So you want to say all you want about Mark and mock him and make fun of him. He did something Daddy didn't do. And he got himself into a market where he's going to be the only NFL show in town. They're giving you a $1.9 billion stadium. You got record amounts of public money. I mean, Jesus. It establishes Mark Davis as a player. And the positive as well is that at least everybody knows what's up now. Now, unfortunately, that still leaves the aura of the organization over the next couple of years of the Raiders are in Oakland, but they got 1 foot in the door, 1 foot already out the door, with the trail leg getting ready to leave and head on the highway towards Las Vegas. But at least it takes away the uncertainty of what's going to happen. We know what's going to happen. That means something, at least, you hope. You're also getting into a new, previously untapped market. A place that Major League Baseball and the NBA in particular haven't ventured to go yet. The NHL is venturing there. But at the end of the day, that's a drop in the bucket compared to the NFL. The NFL is going into a new, previously untapped market. And it also seems like if you were going to put any NFL team in Las Vegas, it's a risk to put a team in Vegas potentially for a variety of reasons. The gambling hub, and in particular the sports gambling hub of the U.S., is there any organization in its profile and its history that seems better suited to be in Las Vegas than the Oakland Raiders? Now the Las Vegas Raiders. I don't think so. The Raiders are the perfect, most natural fit. What better way to rebel against the status quo than to go to the sports gambling hub of the United States? You also got to look at this too. A stadium deal with record money. I mean, this is a massive stadium deal. And the Raiders to get so much help from so many different places. I mean, this is massive. It sets the new bar, really, for future stadium deals. Whereas Jerry Jones's stadium deal, really set a bar. Now the Oakland Raiders, in part, are going to set a new market in terms of stadium deals and potentially NFL franchise valuations going forward. This is a massive deal for them and a huge positive for the Raiders organization and the league. It allows greater access, in my opinion, to a national fan base that they already have established over the past 50-plus years. How many fans from across the country are necessarily going out of their way to go to Oakland to see a game? Now, all of a sudden, you can build trips to Vegas in part around going to see Raiders games in Vegas. People are going to do that. They're going to kill two birds with one stone. I want to go see this Raiders team play, and I want to go to Vegas Two touristy things done in one fell swoop. That is a greater way to pull in not just Raiders fans from the West Coast and the Midwest and the South, but also the East Coast as well. So a lot of them cats are heading over to Vegas for their vacations. There are Raiders fans sprinkled all throughout the country and frankly all throughout the world. Now they can kill, again, two birds with one stone. It gives them greater access to their fan base that they have. It also puts the organization and the city in play for other events. Not to mention other leagues. If this goes well, Major League Baseball is going to want a piece of the pie. The NBA, which seems like an even better fit, wants a piece of the pie. You can host Final Fours in Las Vegas. You could host future WrestleManias in Las Vegas if the U.S. gets a World Cup again. You could use this new stadium in Vegas as one of your showcase places to play games in the World Cup. There are so many benefits that could come out of this massive stadium deal. Just incredible stuff. It puts the Raiders on more stable financial footing. There are just all types of positives and wins all the way around for them. A tremendous deal from them in that standpoint. But again, there are, without getting too caught up in the Kool-Aid, some real significant concerns and questions that I do have about this move. I don't know if it's enough to overcome all the positives, but they are concerns and they are viable, they're real, they're legitimate. First, this is the sports gambling hub of the United States. Now, you can sit there and say, it's always been the case that if Vegas wants to get to somebody, they can get to somebody regardless of where the hell they are. It's true. But how much easier is it to potentially get to them when they're right there in Vegas? Do you really want these athletes being tempted by your gambling capital of the country and your sports gambling capital of the country? While I understand it wasn't the biggest concern for the owners, and I get why it wasn't, it still is the elephant in the room. It's the reason, a major reason at least, why there's never been a major U.S. pro sports franchise there in terms of the NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, the NHL. There's reasons for it, and this is a major one. It'll be interesting how they see fit to deal with that. Also, could it be too much for potential players to handle, too much for them to deal with, too many distractions, too many other things to do? Will players not commit as much because they're enjoying the Vegas life, sniffing crack out of escorts' ass cracks? I don't know. Could be all types of vices available in Vegas. That lifestyle could be too much for certain guys. It could impact the potential types of players that you bring in because you might not be able to bring in the super talented kid because you're afraid he gets in that Vegas environment. He's just asking for fucking trouble. And that's going to be at least somewhat of a concern. But at the end of the day, if athletes want to be stupid enough to get in trouble, they can get in trouble anywhere. They can get as much trouble in Green Bay, Wisconsin, if not more, because of the lack of things to do, as they can in Las Vegas because of all of the things to do. On top of that, with Vegas being Vegas and all the distractions and the touristy crap, will the community actually care? Will the community actually get invested in this? Will the community actually get involved? Just because the community right now and the politicians and so forth, the other businesses in the area might act like they care, when shit gets to get, are they actually going to care? Furthermore, when you talk about that whole media market of San Francisco, Oakland, and then San Jose as well, when you lump that in, that's a top 10 media market in the United States. Was it really wise to go from a top 10 media market to a media market that's barely in the top 45 in Las Vegas? When you look at the state of Nevada in general, there's not a lot of major population hubs. Vegas is by far, I believe, the biggest city. What's Reno second? And what else is really in there in terms of a major city? Whereas just with California alone, you talk about just in that one area, not to mention all the other large cities in that state, you're talking about right there, San Francisco, Oakland, and then San Jose. It was like the 6th biggest media market in the country. And now you leave that to go to one that is outside of the top 40. That seems questionable from a television rating standpoint and a market share standpoint. Also, was it wise to move from the most populous state in the union by a pretty large margin over Texas, to go from California to go to the 35th most populous state in Nevada, again, without a lot of major population centers, a lot of major urban areas? You're talking about a Nevada that, in terms of total population, ranks behind states such as Alabama, South Carolina, Kentucky, Oregon, Connecticut, Iowa, Mississippi, Arkansas, Kansas, and Utah. And you can count the number of NFL franchises in those cities combined with a zero. You might view Vegas as a bit of an exception to the rule here because it's not the smallest city, even though it's not the biggest, but it might be big enough. But again, just in general, in terms of the overall market of the state itself and the size of the population base of which you have to draw from, your margin of error is much smaller in a place like Nevada as opposed to a California. You can turn off large segments of your audience. And if you had a stadium that people actually wanted to fucking go to, if you're the Raiders, you still have a very good chance to sell out every home game. In Vegas, if your team isn't good and you don't have that 30, 40, 50 years of loyalty already pre-programmed and built in, you don't have the same population base to draw off of. If you piss off enough people, are they actually going to bother to show up? Would you have been better off in bigger cities, big media markets like San Antonio or Portland, especially San Antonio? Maybe. Also, what happens in an economic downturn in a place whose economy is so largely derived off of tourism? If things go bad, do people stop going to Vegas? If people stop going to Vegas, who's actually going to go to Raiders games? Because the people aren't coming from all over the country to go to Vegas to go to Raiders games. And because of that, in part, people aren't coming to Vegas because they lose their discretionary income because the economy's taken a shit turn. How are the people that actually live in Vegas, if they actually care, how are they going to actually be able to afford to go to the damn games? Because they're feeding in large part off of the discretionary income of others. If that discretionary income's not there, not only could these other areas having economic problems be a problem, but it would cause a major and significant problem for Las Vegas, a problem that they've tried to insulate themselves from, but they are not really insulated from at all. What happens in an economic downturn type of situation? If things are bad for a year, 2, 3 years, I'm not saying it's going to happen now, but we all know it goes in cycles and ebbs and flows. Eventually, whether it's under the current president, a future president, it's going to happen. So what happens when it does? What's the NFL's contingency plan? The NFL could talk about how this puts the Raiders on more stable financial footing, maybe in terms of the stadium, maybe in terms of certain things that go along with the stadium. But if you got a half-empty stadium for 8 home games a year, they're not on more stable footing any damn where. At the end of the day, I look at this and felt like it was a necessary evil. The Raiders needed to move because Oakland didn't care, and Oakland was too incompetent to ultimately come to the table with something to get it done. Vegas was an appealing option because the NFL, before other leagues and other franchises get in there, it's better to do it now than to wait and see how it plays out. It's better to take your chances and roll the dice to potentially own that town from a sports standpoint. So that made sense. I think in terms of fans, talking about Oakland people, well, they're going to turn away from the Raiders, are they? I think that's a load of shit, in large part because the precedent is there that the team already left the city once to go to Los Angeles, and when they came back, there were Raiders fans still there. And furthermore, the Raiders are a national type of team. If these are people that don't live in the Oakland, San Francisco, San Jose kind of Bay Area, like you got all these Raiders fans that will watch the Raiders on TV in Illinois, in Texas, in Florida, here in Virginia, New York. They're all over the place. Are they really going to give a flying flip whether that team's home is in Oakland, California, or in a place like Las Vegas, Nevada? No. And again, if anything, it might incentivize them to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, to go to Vegas, to do the Vegas thing, and to go see the Raiders, something they might not have done if the Raiders were still playing in Oakland in California. There are a lot of positives here. Significant concerns and questions. I don't think this is the lockdown 100% thumbs up deal that some might make it out to be. It was a necessary evil. I feel like it's a good situation for the Raiders. Probably the best that they could get available to them at this time. And in terms of all the Raiders fans in Oakland that are pissed off, What are you going to do? Stop watching the NFL? You're going to stop rooting for the Raiders? Are you really going to do that? Especially now that the team's gotten good? I mean, if it meant that much to you, maybe you should have put people in power in charge and made enough of your voice heard to sit there and make sure that something happened to where the Raiders would have stayed in Oakland. Because at the end of the day, if people want to just sit there and assume that Mark Davis was just committed to leave and the NFL was just committed to fucking over Oakland and getting the hell out of that marketplace, that's not entirely true. The NFL would have preferred to stay in Oakland. They would have had to, based off of population base, based off of the size of the media market. And without some of the negatives attached to Oakland that there are with Las Vegas, if you held up these two as options, which would you prefer? At the end of the day, you're going to choose Oakland. New stadium in Oakland, California, or new stadium in Las Vegas, Nevada. Anybody with a brain takes the new stadium in Oakland, California, even with Oakland being Oakland and some of the things that go with it. It's still a far better situation and overall option. But it didn't come to pass. Sorry, Oakland, but you lose. Now, we'll see long term if the Raiders, the city of Las Vegas, and ultimately the NFL win or lose themselves with this deal.